Joining me is Victoria Wolf, founder of Wolf Design and Marketing. With 34 years of design experience and 11 years dedicated to helping self-published authors, Victoria specializes in book presentation that ensures stories truly get discovered. Welcome to the Writing Biz, Victoria.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I think this is going to be really interesting because there's so much to ask you about that I had trouble narrowing down the questions. Hopefully this isn't the only time that you'll come back because I feel there's a lot to unpack here.
Oh yeah, there's a cover, interior, ebook. I could talk for hours about each one independently. So hopefully we cover enough today to give everybody a good overview, and then we can maybe at a different time dig in a little bit more into one of the subjects. So
I think that would be terrific because I'm sure I'm not the only one out there with all these questions.
Probably not.
So first I wanted to ask you, when you take on a new author, what's the number one design or formatting mistake they make early on that causes them headaches by the time they reach launch day?
But if they're working with me, whatever mistakes they've made up until that point, I take care of. So by launch day, if they've got mistakes, that's not on them anymore. That's on me. So because I'm not going to let them get that far. But when authors come to me, any type of mistake, if they didn't come to someone like me, could haunt them at launch day is really, I would say it's not hiring a professional to do your cover and your interior. But since they're with me, then they're going to hire a professional. One of the things I do encounter a lot of, and I work with my authors to help fix this, and sometimes I work with the editors, it depends on, every editor is different, is sometimes manuscripts can come in really messy and hard to work with via Microsoft Word. Like they've got a lot of extra hard returns in there. They didn't, add styles to things, so it was hard to follow. But like I said, I do work with the authors to help them clean up their manuscript if need be. And a lot of the editors that I work with that refer me work, they do that as well, because I've got a few editors that won't work on the manuscript if it's in such bad shape. They need it to be, a lot of the correct hierarchy and be organized enough so they can actually do their editing.
Makes sense to me, especially if they're using like the table of contents on the side of a document and trying to follow it. I'm a web designer and I run into the same trouble with text that's sent over to me through Word. If it's done in Google Docs, that's an HTML document. So it's much easier just to copy and paste these large pieces of text and not have to reformat everything once it's in there. But Word is a bit of a nightmare for me.
I don't need authors to format in Word, really. I just need them to delineate. And it's like, okay, is this a head? Or because I need a guide to go by. Right. My requirements for the way the manuscript looks are so basic, but they're important because then there's no question. It's like, hey, is this a subhead or is this a sub-subhead? I don't have to ask the author that question. It's already in the Word document. But other than that, I think the only other thing I might add, sometimes authors can come in with a very strong idea of what they want their cover to be, regardless of whether that's what their cover should be based on genre or the contents of the book. And so that sometimes can be a challenge.
A lot of self-publishing authors that do their own covers and however they do them. But there's a disconnect sometimes between the title and the cover and the contents because they do have that vision of what they want it to be, and it's not necessarily a marketable vision or cohesive to everything.
Exactly.
So that's really important to be able to put those pieces together.
Yeah, and it's tough for the author because they've spent however many years or months, weeks in that manuscript, and so they are so invested in it. And sometimes I've worked with authors that they knew from the beginning, this is what I want my cover to be. And then after we go through the process, the cover looks nothing like that because the cover design process is the first place I feel that an author can start to step outside of themselves and their book and look at it through the eyes of a potential reader and look at it from with a marketing lens. And that can be very eye-opening for authors. It can also be very scary, and sometimes authors will dig in on their concept because they are scared. And others will be like, oh, this is cool, okay. And it's kind of like a ride they want to go on, and they're perfectly good with it. But like I said, others are a little resistant. But at the end of the day, the one point, if I had one thing to say about covers, and it would be that the cover's not for you, the cover's for your reader. And what's meaningful to you on a cover, and I get this a lot with memoir, a certain photo, a certain object or something. And sometimes objects can be very cool no matter whether they mean anything or not to the potential reader, but that's a different story. But if you have a picture that's so meaningful to you but does not encompass what your book's about and does not fit your genre, that's going to, you're just asking for problems down the line. You're not going to sell as well. People aren't going to connect to you and your book as much. And so it's kind of balancing that, which can be challenging.
I agree with everything that you just said. And another thing, sometimes I'll see a fiction cover that almost looks like a nonfiction book, or a nonfiction cover that almost looks like a fiction book. When you're in the bookstore walking by, you don't even really get the title, you get the picture. So if you're not into that nonfiction or the fiction, you don't see it.
Whether authors know this or want to believe this or not, or they should know this, and if you think about it as you as a reader, because every author is a reader as well, you read certain genres and you know your brain, whether you can say it out loud saying, hey, I know that if it's a nonfiction book, it's going to have X, Y, and Z. And if it's a fiction book, it's going to have A, B, and C. You don't maybe articulate this, but your brain knows when you look at a book whether it fits your genre or not, because you're used to seeing it all the time. Especially serial readers, like from the romance category and the sci-fi category, and the fantasy. They're just the way those books look is so critical to selling those books. Now, I always say that yes, you want to fit into your category, but you also want to stand out. So it is possible to fit and still stand out. And that's always the challenge, the ultimate challenge. But I see it all the time. There's a group on Facebook, a self-publishing support group that I lurk in. I'm going to say lurk because I really don't comment too much because I'm a professional. And that group really is for people who are doing everything themselves, even cover design and stuff. And I see that mistake a lot amongst authors is they say, hey, what do you think of my cover? And I'm like, oh, it's okay, cool for a fiction cover. And then they're like, oh, this is nonfiction, or vice versa. And, but that's the most important thing, is to stay in genre, because readers are smart and they know what they're looking at.
I agree. Also, you have where it's online and you have to be cognizant of what the cover looks like in that tiny little thumbnail that you have. I have a background in graphic design, so I'm always keeping my eyes on things like this and looking for how the industry changes. Over the years that I've done this, it's changed so much, so much. About the cover and how authors fall in love with a design that may not actually be what is the best way to present their book. Let me back up a minute. I'd like to know how you got into this, because you've been in this a minute. You've been into this business for a while. So I'd like to know how you got into it.
Just a little while. I've been doing graphic design for 34 years. And back in, I think it was like 15 or 16, a woman who is also a publisher, I knew her from business networking in Denver, and she just called me up one day. Back then we were still using phones, I guess. Or she sent me an email. I don't know which it was. And she's like, hey, Victoria, do you want to do a cover? And I'm like, I've never done a cover before. And so we did this cover, and I fell in love with the process and just the idea of book covers. And for the next 2 or 3 years, I just started getting rid of all my other clients and acquiring book cover clients. And then I said, hey, well, I'm also do interiors, because I've been working with InDesign since before it was InDesign. So then I added that, and now I do ebooks. I do everything an author could possibly need in the way of graphic design and marketing for their book. So yeah, it was just like, where are these books all my career? They're just so much fun, because I can have the same genre, different authors, but each book is different. The design challenge is different for each book. So I am challenged every single day, and I absolutely love that.
The fun thing about what I do too is that challenge. It's always changing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a little difficult too, because it's always changing when you're using technology and things like that. But it keeps it exciting. I don't get bored with it.
Right. And that's important for people like us as creative people, because we can get bored pretty easily. And following the trends change, but design trends outside of the book world change every 3 to 5 years. So it's not much different to following trends in the book world. Things are going to change. Like, I forget when Malcolm Gladwell had his first book out, that cover was so trendy that covers for years after that, where it's like, we've got the title, then we have this tiny little graphic, and that's your cover. And so many of those covers you saw because of Malcolm Gladwell's book. And now today, a trend that, I kid you not, in the last 3 months, I've had at least 6 or 7 authors when I tell them that go find some books that you like in your genre, some covers you like. And they've come with me with, it was Atomic Habits and Left Them. Those two right there, everybody seems to love those. So I guess we have a new sparkly trend in book covers, at least for nonfiction.
I have to admit that both of them are eye-catching. And once you see the Atomic cover, you know it anywhere. It sits with you.
It is, but here's the kicker for self-published authors. That may be an amazing cover for that book because that book is traditionally published. That author probably has a platform, and he could put an egg frying on the concrete on the cover, and he's going to sell books. So the word of warning for self-published authors is you cannot, or you should not, follow those trends that the traditional published authors are following or setting a hook, line, and sinker, because you don't have that big audience. Your cover's got to do a little bit more work than, say, the Atomic Habits or the Let Them cover does. Doesn't mean you can't have the bling or you can't have trendy, but you gotta be more spot on, if that makes sense.
Right. I'm a fantasy author, so I also read a lot of fantasy. And the book covers are pretty amazing to keep an eye on. They change, like you mentioned, trends. It's almost year-to-year trends with the fantasy book covers, I believe. And they're even different within genre. Like if it's about werewolves, their style may be different than the vampire book. So it's really cool to watch that. But another thing is that some of these books have amazing formatting. I'm like, whoever put this together really knew what they were doing.
That's a place where I know my philosophy of formatting ever since I've been doing it has been so much different than what's been out there. And it looks like I won't say it's catching up to me, but you're seeing more and more design go into the interior, where I have always said that the design does not stop at the front cover. It goes all the way through. It's an experience, and the reader experience is so important and so very ignored by a lot of self-published authors. And if I can't scream this loud enough, how important it is, because you think back to all the books that you've read, there's books that you're in the middle of and you're not enjoying and you're not sure why, because you really wanted it, you like the topic, whatever the case may be. And it probably is that it's not formatted well and it's hard to read, and your brain you're fighting this reading. And I've had people, other authors, tell me this. It's like, I've had this book or that, but I tried to read it. I couldn't get through it. And it's because too much space in between the words. It's too small. There's not enough line spacing or leading. It's just too much is crammed on a page. There's many things that you can do with an interior that make reading it more difficult. And I'm all about readability, because there is a bit of a scientific formula for readability. It's not just like, hey, 10 point with 12 or 13 leading looks good. Let's go with that. No, there actually is line length, all that goes into the equation that makes for easy reading. And once you got okay, this is easy to read and people are not going to trail off, then you're like, okay, well, let's make it more exciting. Let's make it more visual. And that's when we start adding in the visual stylistic elements. But first and foremost, I don't know if you can have a boring interior that's straight text with no flourishes, nothing. But if it's easy to read, it's better than the fanciest interior that's hard to read.
I think too, as people age, it can be difficult for them to read those really tiny print, tight line books. I know myself. I've put them down when I've picked them up in the bookstore and said, I just know I can't do that.
Well, and it's tough. Do you have to get a second or an additional pair of readers as we get older for small book print? No, you shouldn't have to. But what happens a lot is, especially on the larger books, the higher word counts, the traditional publishers do this. You wouldn't think they do, but they do. They take into consideration how many pages they're printing more than how hard or easy it is to read, which is sad. And you can pick up a traditionally published book and things be too small, as you just mentioned. And I'm cognizant of that too with self-published authors, because they're paying for every single page to print. So if you have 350 pages or you have 450, that's going to cost you money. But at the same time, it's going to cost you more money down the road if your book's not easy to read. So it's a balance. And adding 20 or 30 pages to an interior because you increase the space just a little bit between the lines, it's going to cost you pennies at Amazon or Ingram to print. So it's really, it's a great investment.
Recently finished a series. The first book was Empire of the Vampire. And it's an excellent series if you're into fantasy. But the books themselves, there's 3 books, and they're each 700 pages long. And there's illustrations that are stunning in these books. I read them all on a tablet, but I'm going to get the whole set, the hardcover, because they're just that gorgeous. But that's one of the thoughts I had when I saw that. I said, wow, it's got to cost him a pretty penny to print these books.
That's a big book. But if the genre, I don't read fantasy and I don't do too many fantasy covers. I've done a couple. But if the genre dictates long, if almost all of them are long, and then that's agreeable to the reader. Now, if somebody with a memoir had a 700-something page memoir, I would be like, oh, that might be a little too long because you're probably going to lose people there. But it's interesting. The genres have their own settings. Settings is not the right word. The genres have their own standards. And so readers support that. And as long as you fit into that, you're going to be just fine. And it's like you said earlier about the vampire fantasy versus the werewolf fantasy versus another one, they look different. So it's not just about genres sometimes, it's the subgenres. You got fantasy vampires, fantasy wolfmans. I said, werewolf, thank you. I don't know how I did that. That was funny. And so that's important to know we're subgenre too, because there can be a huge distinction, and it may not signal properly if your cover's not signaling, oh, I'm the X part of the genre, then you're not going to get that reader. Romance is really big like that.
Do you advise your clients on paper as well? As far as what kind of paper is used on the page?
Oh, yeah.
You know, do you
don't
advise
have,
them?
if print on demand, you don't have a lot of choices. But everything that isn't a business book should be cream, is in my opinion. And now, as of last week in beta, you have another option through KDP. It's called Ground something another. What is it called? Groundwood or something. It's somewhere in between cream and white, and it's actually a little bit thinner, about the thickness of the white. And I think it's called Groundwood actually, and it's a little bit cheaper to print on. But other than that, you've got white or cream, and those are your 2 choices.
It's interesting. I haven't seen that app. I'll be looking for it to see what that actually looks like on person.
Yeah, and what's interesting, it's called Groundwood. Yep, I just double checked it. You can order a sample of it it's one of Amazon's classic books, so you can spend $13 to get a sample of it. Or I would recommend just upload your book, choose Groundwood, get an author copy, and see if you like it, rather than buying the other book for $13. But you can do what you want.
But I think too that you're going to be pay a little more attention if it's your own book when you get it to how things are set up and everything to make sure it's correct in the way that you want it.
Exactly. But here's this: if you're not familiar with the cream, what that looks like, and then you get a sample, how do you know? You know what I mean? It's like you almost have to get one in cream and one in Groundwood to see which one you like better. Supposedly the new Groundwood color is supposed to be easier on the eyes. It's not quite as bright. So I haven't seen it yet, but I will see.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
I read a lot. I'm sure you do too. And sometimes it can be really tiring.
Yeah. Don't expect them to take older readers into consideration, because you can't favor one over another unless that is totally your target audience. Then I can say, okay, I could see them going, oh, we're going to do a bigger type. We're going to do a different paper. But many books have a wide audience in age. So they try to, I guess, split the difference and fall in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, as is expected. I would think they have to just kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
Then we can always deal with it. Well, I read a lot on ebooks just because I have book problems. I have too many books. It's become an issue with my family because they're like, we're tired of moving your books and packing your books, and we don't even know where to put your books anymore. So I cleaned out literally half of my books, and I'm still in that same situation.
Oh, so ebooks are just a lot easier to store.
I try not to buy print, but there's things like if it's anything technical, like about writing or something like that, I do buy. the hardcover or the soft cover, because then I can keep going back to it. And it's easier to highlight and do all the things in the book than it is on the tablet.
A tactile book, completely different experience. But I guess if you start to get too many, you have to make some decisions. Maybe it's a one book in, one book out rule. For every new book you buy, you have to get rid of one. Or maybe if the collection is that big, you might have to get rid of two for every new book you buy. I don't know.
Hilarious. You're really hilarious. My daughter has brought that up many times, and I'm like, but what?
Yeah, that's like, what? You want me to get rid of books? No, I'm not doing that.
She's like, Mom, nobody's even going to be interested. I have shelves of books on forensics and how to kill people and how to poison people because of writing.
Right.
I have shelves on witchcraft and werewolves and vampire. Who's going to take this stuff from me?
Somebody wants, everybody, what one person doesn't want, somebody somewhere wants it. That's the rule of the world. One person's trash is another person's treasure. I've never seen that.
Daughter's like, I won't even have the time to catalog what you have to even try to sell it, like on eBay or Amazon. So I told her I would work on that.
Oh, well, yeah, like, make it easier for her at least. Yeah.
Yeah, make it easier. We'll see if I do it or not.
Yeah, that's a big endeavor. That is a big endeavor.
It's a problem, for real. So tell me about all the services that you provide. Obviously, we talked about the formatting and the cover. How do you break up your services when an author comes to you? Do you tailor them to their specific needs? Just tell me a little bit about your business.
Yeah, I think every author is different. Every book is different. There's a lot of things that are the same with every book. Almost everybody's going to Amazon. Not everybody, but almost everybody. Most people, if they're not going to IngramSpark, they should be. Most everybody has an ebook. So there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences based on genre, based on content, based on the author's goals. So everything that we do is based on the author's goals. So I work this business with my husband, Rich, he does all the publishing side of the business. So he helps the authors decide what platforms they're going to be on, how are they going to sell, where are they going to sell, how to get onto these platforms, get their ISBNs, work on their back blurb, all the mechanics of actually getting the book out there in the world. And he also helps with marketing. And we work together on the marketing, and then I do all the creative, the interior, the cover, the ebook. Lots of authors need collateral like bookmarks and postcards and business cards. I also do, like you said, you're a web designer. I also do author websites, A+ content, anything you could possibly need, posters, banners. We're like a one-stop shop for an author.
Oh, that's terrific.
And we approach everything with strategy. And that's where the no author is the same comes in. Depends on their goals, depends on their books. Especially for nonfiction authors, many nonfiction authors have a business that they're bringing this book into. They're using this book to get more business. So the book is a tool for greater things rather than a book to be sold. And that's 100% of the goal for the book. So we work with them as well. We've worked with a lot of fiction authors, a lot of older fiction authors who have wanted their entire lives to write a book. And we've helped them make that a reality. And that's always fun and rewarding. And I worked on just about every genre. I've done a lot of coffee table books, cookbooks, almost everything, and children's books.
Well, that's terrific. That's terrific. Now, I have a very good friend of mine that's a children's book publisher in Boston, well, outside of Boston. And I've learned a lot about particular children's books through her, because the work I've done with her over the years. And that is a whole different animal when you get into covers and the interior and the illustrations. As she's had clients come to her with like finished illustrations, but then she goes through the book and she's like, no, they're not going to work, or it may not even be the quality. It may not be that they actually fit the story. She's had some really serious situations, but it's been interesting to watch that and learn the differences between a regular publishing house and the children's.
Yeah, the children's is its own little animal. And yes, I've run into that too. People go out and get their illustrations before they even decide their trim size, which leads me to believe that they were not working with an actual book illustrator, because that book illustrator would have said, oh, and I can't do anything without a trim size, because that determines everything. But I've been able to help some authors that have made that mistake But I try to insert myself as early into the process as I can to work with the illustrator to make sure that they understand the trim size, they understand that there's a gutter there, that they can't put stuff in the gutter. Because there's a ton of illustrators out there that are just getting started in books. Maybe they've never done one before, or they've only done a couple, and they don't have a good education. And I've worked on enough children's books with illustrators like that to now it's like a mission of mine to make sure illustrators know how to illustrate for books. And then there's the aspect, it's like, if the author didn't have any guidance from an editor or anything, and they're guiding the illustrator to create the illustrations, do the illustrations, forward the story, work with the story. So that's a huge part. And you really need a very talented illustrator can help you with that. If you have an editor and an illustrator and the author working together, that's the trifecta of perfection there. But yeah, there's a lot of, you think it's like, oh, we just have illustrations, we have words, we put it together. But sometimes children's books can be more challenging than regular books.
She works with this one client. He's an amazing author in Ukraine. His name's Oleg Voretsky. And he is actually on the front lines of the Ukrainian war.
Oh,
And he writes, like in the dugouts.
oh my
It's
goodness.
amazing.
Wow.
But he's done a Ukrainian fairy tale / fantasy series. It's really interesting.
Oh, that does sound
Originally, the first book was published in the Ukraine. I believe it was under a different title, whatever. So there were illustrations that were made then. Well, when they decided to do the book in English, some of those illustrations changed or had needed adjustments, and trying to communicate
right.
through Oleg, who's literally in the war, to his illustrator, who's Ukrainian as well. And all this going back and forth, and the proofreading, and oh my goodness, it was amazing. I just am blown away that she was able to put all those pieces together
That's a lot
and
of
come
moving
out with
parts.
this terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, this terrific product. It was a lot.
I'm glad it all
years
worked
in the
out.
making. Yeah, it did. They're completed the second book, I believe, and starting on the third. I think she just completed the audiobook for the second book.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, today I just got from her a set of cards for illustrations in his books
Oh, cool.
that she sent out. Yeah, oh, they're just gorgeous. They're just gorgeous. If you ever have a chance, look up olegvoretsky.com. It's well worth looking at his stuff. But that would be a good explanation or instance of having to tailor things to that author and no book being the same, because the process of working with his books was very much different than you would normally have.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would think so.
Luckily today, too, we have the communications that we have.
Oh, yeah.
We're not trying to do everything by letter.
Yeah, that would be a little difficult. What I do, one of the very unique things that I do as a book designer is I design live on Zoom with my authors, not the original layout. So I'll do, like, for covers, I do a first round of covers. There's no author involved there. And then when we go back in, because I'll give 3 to 5 or even more concepts. And then once we refine the concept, decide on that, and then it's like, oh, what if we move this here? What if we made this color, this title a different color? What if we did all those little tweaks? It's just ridiculous to do those on email and keep sending proofs. So we get together on Zoom and I do it live in real time. Some of the changes are a lot extensive and some of the changes are small. I do the same thing with interiors. I lay out the entire interior, then we have a Zoom call with the author, and they say, hey, well, I really like this body font. Can we look at some more? And I will show them all their choices, and I have it set up in a way that I just make one change and it changes throughout the entire book. And so it's a very interactive, collaborative approach that I take when it comes to book design.
That's great. And it's so helpful, too, that the tools have kept up with the need. It's the way a book was designed 30 years ago compared to today is like night and day.
Oh, yeah. And it just keeps changing. AI is changing where this industry is going. And some may argue it's not changing it in a good way, and others argue it's great. So we're still trying to figure out where this is all going to land. And I don't know if we're going to know anytime soon. But I do know that there's a lot of people, a lot of authors doing their own covers in AI. And I have seen a lot that just are not good. But I do also understand there's a lot of people writing books that don't have the funds to hire someone like me, and they want to get their work out there. So I do see that there's a place for everything. I'm not anti-AI at all. I use very little AI, but what AI I do use is it's all licensed via Adobe, and I use it very sparingly, because it's licensed, which makes it copyrightable. But doing, and I've had a handful of clients who come to me with what they created in AI, and I have to go in and I have to fix it and maybe add typography to it because most AI is not very good at typography yet.
Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes I have to fix the AI art because there's an extra digit or something, in a hand or something like that, which I can go into Photoshop and do that. But like I said, there's a place for that, and I will never disparage that place. But if you're really serious about selling books and you want to compete in your genre, I highly recommend hiring a professional. Because there's just something, you can put your back blurb into AI, you can give it whatever brief you have, you can read your whole manuscript, but I just think there's something intangible about another human being and you, the author, and that other human being, the book designer, really talking about what your book is about, what's going to make that cover curious and interesting so that somebody picks it up. I think eventually AI might be able to do it, but I don't think it's really there yet.
It's having that eye. Designers look at things differently. They're looking at a whole project. It's different. It's a subjective thought that the AI doesn't have, that years of doing whatever thing you're doing and paying attention to what the industry is doing, all those different things that you can put together to make an exceptional cover. I don't think that AI is even close to that right now.
No.
It's better than it was a couple of years ago, but
Oh, yeah.
it's not close.
No, and the other
So I
thing,
think that makes a big difference.
yeah, and the other thing AI can't do is add any type of emotion into it. A cover has one job. It is to get the reader's attention and cause them to do one of two things. Flip the book over if they're in a bookstore and read the back blurb, or click on the link on Amazon or somewhere, wherever you are online where you see the book. That's its job. So the title and the cover work together. And titles are another thing that Rich and I love to work on. We offer title workshops for many of our clients because a lot of titles are not good. A title and a cover and a back blurb, almost everything visual except for the inside of the book, which there's still some marketing in there, is all about marketing. A cover is not decorative. It has a job. It is supposed to market your book, and it's supposed to evoke emotion in your potential reader. And I think that AI approaches everything as decorative. And I think that's where some of the problems come in. But it'll get better eventually, I would think.
That was a good way to explain it, because I think that's probably a much better way than I put it, is that they see it as decorative and not as the whole piece of this marketing system.
Right.
That you're trying to get the reader. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like my book has the main character is, let's call it a shark, right? So I'm going to get AI to make this really scary shark on the cover, and I'm going to put some text there. But what is that really scary shark going to do? If you are not a horror book, the scary shark could put you in a different genre. And if you're already giving away that there's a scary shark, where's the curiosity on the cover? So instead of putting this big scary shark with all these teeth, think of the Jaws poster or something, you might just put a fin out of the water. Maybe it's, and there was a poster, speaking of Jaws, I'll go in this direction, and that just ages, I think, both of us possibly. One of the movie posters for Jaws was just that. Somebody in the water, I believe it was. I could be wrong here. That was 50 years ago. But I'm going to say, I feel like I'm right. There's a fin, and then there's somebody in the water. And so that suggestion there, that's all you need. You don't need the scary shark. Now, there was another poster with the scary shark too. So thinking of covers like that is, you want a little ambiguity. You don't want to give it all away. You want them to go, oh, well, what more is in here? Because if you give away too, I've met with authors that want to create a scene from their book on the cover, or have everything that went on in their book on the cover. And then you're just like, well, what's left for the reader? You've pretty much told the story on the cover. Yeah, you can read the story in detail, but yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things for authors, is to pull back and be a little bit more minimalist on the cover than trying to throw everything, throwing the kitchen sink on the cover.
I had a guest. Actually, I was editing her podcast today. Her name's Nina Amir, and I talked with her when I had this podcast a long time ago. But we discussed having a business plan for your book. And I think that this piece of the puzzle in that business plan to really understand what effort time needs to be spent on getting these pieces right of the actual book instead of the writing and the publishing is important. And also to understand the costs of that and to be able to decide as an author what you can and cannot do.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that completely.
some people will do the AI cover. Some people will have their friend down the street, whatever.
Right. And it's all about
It's all viable. It's just as somebody who's trying to put together a marketable product, it's easier to understand and see what's coming down the road and where your money needs to be spent. So maybe you do more of the editing yourself so you can put more money into the cover and be able to see all those pieces laid out in a way that's understandable so you can get the top level view and then also be able to look at each piece individually and take them apart and see
exactly
how they're going to work in your journey.
We always say, we tell our authors, it's like if you have a limited budget, the first place you spend is editing. If you have money left over, you spend it on cover. In that hierarchy, and then of course interior at that point, because some people don't have the money to do all of it. But if you can have the most beautiful cover, but if your story isn't good, if your guts are not good, you're not going to sell a lot of books. You can have a horrendous cover with an amazing story inside, you're still going to sell some books. So that story, first and foremost, is the most important thing. That's where all the money goes. That's what we always say. It's like, we're not editors, but you spend your money on editing, and if there's anything left, come back. But you'll get more bang for your buck if you do that. Because down the line, you never know. You sell some books, you're like, okay, I've got money, I can redo. You can always redo your.
That's exactly what I was just going to mention, that you can always redo your cover.
Yep. And
so
and if you're going to use AI to do your cover, again, I am not against it at all. If you're a first-time author, especially in the fiction, no matter what genre you're in, go look at your genre. Look at it carefully. Spend hours looking at your genre, your subgenre, and then create your cover that looks like it belongs in that genre. And you will not go wrong if you do that. If all the books in your genre have a big single image, say, I'm going to use an animal again. It's an eagle, right? If this book is about an eagle, and this book is about a horse, and this book is, and they all have big single images, well, then find a big single image. Maybe it's not an animal for your book. Maybe it's a person or something, and do that so it all looks the same. The typography, if it's all very ornate because it's a fantasy book, then do it that way. And you just follow your genre, and you cannot go wrong. And I don't think enough authors know that or do that.
There should be a consistency across a series. So that series is easily identifiable, not just in the bookstore, but even on your own bookshelf.
Oh yeah, definitely. Continuity amongst the series is so important. And so that puts a pressure on you, either you or AI, whoever's doing the cover, or me, to get that first one, knock that out of the park, because that's going to set the tone for all the other ones. And so that's what you have to think about. If you have a series, be like, okay, they all have to look somewhat the same. So, okay, well, that's going to be easy. Typography is going to be easy. But one of the things I see too with some authors is if you have a series, let's say you have 5 books, and the first book is a 1-word title. And then on book 3, you've got a 4-word title, right? It's like, how are we going to maintain the same look and feel with a 4-word title? So all these things kind of come into play. It's not just about how the cover looks. It's like, well, what did I title it? I've got all 1 words, or I've got 2 words. There is some variability there, but if you want to maintain consistency, even the title and the amount of words and length of words needs to be somewhat consistent too.
My fantasy series I'm working on now, in each book, there's a different secondary character. So there's the main character. I don't want to say all that, but she's a witch. But the other ones listed, one is an elf, and one is a vampire, and one is a werewolf. So but each one, the name is like that. It's only 4 words. But each one is consistent across the series, and the artwork that I plan to have done is consistent across the series. So it all blends together.
And that's so
And
important.
that's just because of my own experiences in this business. Not that I know everything, and I don't mean to say that because I sure as hell don't. But
No, but you know what you know up until this point, and this is what you know, and this is what you're working with. 2 years from now, you're going to have this conversation and you know something different. So you can't know everything, but you're doing really amazing with what you've learned so far, and you're doing everything right. The other thing is making sure those spines line up. Sometimes that's nothing you can do about that because like if you have the series number on the spines, you have it in the same place and stuff like that. Yeah, so that looks. A lot of designers or even authors don't think about what that spine's going to look like on a bookshelf in a series. So you want to see them all together and have them all. It's kind of like the Hardy Boys, which if you take a bunch of Hardy Boys books or Nancy Drew books, that little picture of them, I think it was the either Nancy or the Hardy Boys that was, I think, in the middle of the spine on each one. Sometimes it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. That's a printing thing. But you want to try and maintain continuity as much as possible.
well, it's a matter of selling books too, because if it's obvious this is a series on the bookshelf at the bookstore, then a lot of people just buy that series or know exactly where to go to when they're ready for the second, third, fourth, fifth book or whatever.
Yeah.
But if it's easily identifiable like that, like, oh, what are those books with my brain stopped? They were the vampire. Remember King Jacob?
Oh
And,
yeah, I can't.
you know what I'm talking
Twilight.
about. Anybody who
Twilight.
listens is going to know.
It was Twilight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Twilight series. They're easily identifiable. I think when their first one came out, it was different. They changed the cover on that. But now when you see them in the bookstore, they're easily identifiable. And most of the big house publishers are,
Yeah.
you know,
And you can always go
pretty
back if
cognizant
you
of that.
do one in your series and then you get to two and you had better ideas or you got feedback from readers.
Or money.
You can always go back and redo your covers. That's what's so amazing about print on demand. You can upload, to your heart's content. You shouldn't, not that many, but you can always change it. And so it takes the pressure off sometimes. And sometimes you have to go back because you thought one thing going in and then you get feedback from your readers and you're like, oh, okay, something different is important to them. Let me make this change. And I love that.
I've done that myself to where somebody changed a cover on a book I'd passed on. And then now I'm interested in it. And I start to read it and I'm like, well, I knew about this book before. And then I realized it was a different cover and that's why it didn't.
Oh, so obviously that first cover did not grab you. That's good data. That's very good data.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot about books and I know a lot about marketing and I'm not going to say I'm going to get it right 100% of the time too. So, and you see it all the time with the big publishers. I've seen a trend now that the paperbacks are different than the hardcover, the book. And every 3 to 5 years, you probably need to refresh your cover, depending on what genre it's in, and keeping an eye on the trends. So you don't want to look too old because everybody wants new stories. Not everybody, but people like that. And so you want to make sure you're fitting in. You go to like Stephen King and some of the other really huge authors, and you can find 4 or 5 different versions of, if not more, of a cover for a single book. They're out there that they've changed the cover so many times. So
I think too, as a reader, that if an author does that, and maybe it will cause you to even go back and reread that series.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that book.
Too. Yeah, that's
because it's like, oh yeah, I remember, I love that book. But yeah, it's I love talking about this. This was really interesting. Thank you so much. I would definitely love to talk to you about this more at another time. Maybe break it into little pieces even further.
I'd be game for that.
Well, that'd be terrific. I really appreciate you coming on today, Victoria. So tell everyone how they can reach out to you.
Go to Wolf Design and Marketing, all spelled out.com. We also have a YouTube channel at Wolf's on Books, and we're on Facebook and LinkedIn, Wolf Design and Marketing. And you can reach me at my email, but I'm not going to give you my email on a podcast. So you just have to go to the website.
No, I wouldn't do that. Yes, go to the website. But do go to the website because I looked through it. I looked at a lot of your different covers, and they were really pretty impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I have quite the portfolio on there. We've done closing in on 100 books. I don't have them all up there, but I have quite a few. There's interior samples, there's website samples, there's cover samples. We have a lot up there. So
That's a lot of work by itself.
Yeah.
I'm sure you and your husband don't have a whole lot of downtime because it sounds like you're pretty busy.
No, and we kind of like it that way. But we're always open to new business. Just so yeah.
Sure.
But we work a lot and we like it that way.
Me too. So thank you very much. And to learn more about the podcast and to sign up to be the first to learn about any new episodes, visit thewritingbiz.com. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, take what you've learned and put it to your own work on your writing biz. Thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.